Hey everyone, so for today's video I wanted to do a Draw My Life video. However, I am not the best artist on the planet, and so enjoy my stick figure riddled story of my life so far and the experiences that I've had and the people that I've known. So without further ado, let's get into it. It all started on April 17th, 1998, when I was born in St. Louis Park, which is right outside of Minneapolis, Minnesota. I was my parents' little miracle because my mom was told she wasn't able to have kids. But here I was. And I was born sometime in the afternoon, I think. Before dinner, of course, because why would you ever miss dinner? And those are my parents, my mom and dad, Joy and Jeff. And they took me home to the house I grew up in, which was a really old converted farmhouse, 2-story, and I lived in the top. I could always peer out my window through the trees that I am now trying to draw and spy on the street and everything that was going on. When I was a baby, I was sick a lot. I didn't sleep. I cried all the time. I didn't eat. I was a happy baby, but not in health. I spent a lot of time inside because I didn't have a good immune system. I watched a lot of videos, but I also loved to read. I read so many books, and then I started just imagining things. I always joke I was raised with a good imagination, and that only compounded when in May, 2 years after I was born, my mom came home with my sister, Erica, and I was so excited that Erica existed. I was so happy to have a sister that I could love and teach things and share things with, and so it was just the biggest blessing to have her. We were inseparable growing up. I don't have a lot of concrete memories of being a child. Well, I have some, but they're not happy. But my favorite memories always involve my mom pushing my sister and I around in her double stroller, and I would always talk to mom while Erica slept. And I would read books, and we would walk around the neighborhood, walk to the library, and just experience the world. My mom was the person that taught me to always ask questions and always question the world. When I was 5, one day we were at our grandparents' house, and my grandfather always liked to read the Tribune, which was Minneapolis's official paper of record. And I wanted a piece of that action. And he told me that I shouldn't read the news because the news was depressing. But I decided that I wanted to do that. I wanted to be the one to write the news. And my obsession began. When I was 6, I started dance classes at the local community center. I had a cool ballet teacher, and I can't remember her name, but I remember she always called me Miss Amanda, which made me feel so grown up and important. It was a small thing, but it was a lot of fun, and I really treasure those memories. When I was 10, I went to what I called a real dance studio. It was called Sundance, and it was in a nicer, more suburban area of Minneapolis. And while I was there, I made my very first friend. Her name was Ayla, and she was homeschooled, like me, and we had a lot of things in common, more specifically our obsession with Star Wars. Ayla and Erica and I became inseparable during our middle school years. We had a lot of fun together, and I still talk to her today. When I was 10, I really started to come into my own. I loved Star Wars, I loved journaling, and I realized that writing was for more than just essays, which was a shocking moment for me. When I was in 7th grade, we went to a church called Edinburgh, and that church was the place that I was for most of my formative years in junior high. I started off in what was called Club 56, a group for 5th and 6th graders, and the club's leaders, a husband and wife named Chris and Steph, were the most important and influential people outside of my family. They showed me the meaning of a true loving marriage, and while I was there at that age, I started my first blog, which can still be found today, but it's embarrassing. When I was 12 in 7th grade, everything changed. I started to be ostracized by all the kids in my grade, girls that I thought were my friends. I thought it was because my body was changing. I was going through puberty fast because of my health issues. And everything kind of started to crash down on me. My mom was getting sicker, I was experiencing all of these things, and it just made me feel really messy and really gross. It was the worst year of my life. During that time, my parents said, "Hey, you want to move to Texas?" And there wasn't anything left for me in Minnesota. So I said, "Yeah, let's go." So we packed up and we moved to a small rental house in a suburb of Dallas, Texas. Since I was homeschooled, it wasn't an inconvenience to move in February, which is what we did. The middle of the year didn't bother me so much, and we started going to church there. And at the time, I was a freshman, and I met a boy. I had a boyfriend, and I made friends. And it was such a shock and such a departure to me from where I was before. It was nice, but I kind of always felt like I was just one wrong step away from losing my newfound popularity. Which it turns out I was. I lost my boyfriend, and then I lost my friends. And my body image issues only continued to grow. That's my horrible drawing of a mirror. We switched churches again, this time to a small church right near downtown Dallas, and I started volunteering at the youth group in the sound booth, mostly because I wanted to avoid social interaction. But one day, the youth pastor, after he'd been training me for quite some time, he realized that I wanted to do more. I had wanted to be on the worship band because it means no one would have to talk to me, but for then, I was just content to be in the sound booth. But then he asked, hey, can you train someone on this so you could play piano? Because they didn't have a pianist. I didn't know anyone by name, so I just picked on the first kid that I knew. His name was Noah. He was relatively shy like me, and I figured he knew about AV stuff, so might as well draft him to help me in the sound booth. I started training him, and at first I was very shy. I didn't really talk to him, assuming he just wanted to be trained and then go on his way and be with his friends, but we actually started to talk, and it turns out that he wasn't bad company. One night, Saturday night before church, he texted me asking me if I was going to be in church. We had never texted before. I was a little put off, but in a good way. He asked if we could sit together, and from that text, we just never stopped texting. A few months later, my family and I took a trip to Houston to see a doctor, one of the many we were seeing for all of our chronic health issues. Noah called me and told me that he was developing feelings for me, and I turned him down because at the time, I only saw him as a friend or like a brother. Now, that's gonna change, but you just have to wait and see for that. I had to turn him down on the phone in the car in front of my entire family, which was so bad because I felt horrible, and when we stopped at a rest stop, I just sat outside and cried because I was so scared of losing my only and best friend. When I was 16, I went to my first homecoming dance with a group of friends that went to a homeschool co-op. The dance was held the night before I had to take the SAT, so I had to leave the dance early, but that was the night that I had my first slow dance, and it was with Noah. In 2014, right before the dance, I started an Instagram account where I posted my poetry that I wrote, and it still exists today. You can find it, I'll link it down below, but I started to realize that the things that I wrote and had experienced actually helped people. They actually impacted them, which was an incredible concept. I had friends during high school. I had numerous female friends. If I tried to draw them all, this video would be so long, but I had 3 guy friends. We dubbed ourselves the Squad because we're super original. And they were Noah, this kid named Alex, who's really that tall, it's kind of sad, and then this other guy named Jeremy. And Noah, Alex, Jeremy, and I were our inseparable foursome. But I was conflicted, because all the time that I was spending with my friends, I started to wonder if I was falling in love with Noah, but I realized, no, that couldn't possibly be it. At the same time, I was going to college, a little community college called El Centro that was just down the street. I was doing dual credit, which means I was taking college courses and my homeschool high school courses at the same time. I was really nervous at first, but it turned out I actually thrived in a classroom setting, especially in college, where everyone was more close to my mental maturity than elsewhere. I realized I could do it, and it made me less scared for college. When I turned 17, I applied to SMU's journalism department, and I got in. I called Noah, and we were really excited, but what he didn't know is that that same month, in January, we were planning to take a trip to Pennsylvania, to Philadelphia, to see if there was a doctor there that could help us. When my parents realized we could move there, my parents pitched to me, should I go to PA for journalism school? And I said yes, but as the months went on, I realized I had to tell Noah that I was leaving eventually. And I put it off and put it off until April. I went to his prom, or his school formal. I guess the school wasn't big enough to have a prom, but he gave me a corsage, and I still have it. But I realized we had all these memories, and I was about to lose all of it. Right after I graduated high school, we moved from Texas to the East Coast to Philadelphia. Diploma in hand, we loaded up the U-Haul and drove away. I applied to multiple schools, but I ended up choosing Temple University, mostly because the financial aid was good, but also because I loved their journalism department. It trained you in print journalism, which is what I wanted. I didn't want to be on TV. And with some trepidation, I prepared for my first foray into adulting. We lived in a row home, so I had my own bedroom as opposed to the apartment we lived in Dallas, which was great, but it was still kind of a lot to get used to, living in a brand new city, not knowing anyone, The weekend before I was about to start my freshman year of classes at Temple, I was wandering around the student center on campus after new student convocation, and I was lost. So I poked my head in the door of an office that just happened to be open. I didn't notice the name on the door, but it said the Temple News, the on-campus newspaper I had planned to join when I was a junior or a senior and had ample journalism experience. One downside of being homeschooled, you don't have a school newspaper, so I knew I was already coming in at a deficit. When I poked my head in, the guy sitting across the desk at the design desk asked me if I was a journalism major and if I was interested in joining the Temple News. I said, yeah, but I don't have any experience, and I'm only a freshman. But that didn't matter to him. He drugged me over to the news desk, where I got to meet the two women that would become my mentors. The very first thing they said to me was, "Ooh, we have cards now," because they had just gotten business cards that day, and I still carry them in my wallet as a reminder of the way that I got hooked on the newspaper, something that I'm honestly really glad I didn't wait to join until my junior year. I would have missed out on a lot. But anyway, Julie was the news editor, and she's the one with the short hair, and Jillian was the assistant news editor, and they taught me so much, everything from how to be a good reporter to a good editor, what ethical journalism really meant, and the things that they taught me helped me apply things to most of my classes. With their insistence and encouragement, I started attending news meetings, which were weekly pitch meetings where they would get together around a table with a bunch of freelancers, and they would talk about what we should cover for the following week. And over time, I got better and better. This girl, Kelly, and I became beat reporters. Kelly covered the local community, and I covered student government after a brief stint covering the school's research, which turned out to be less interesting than I thought it would be. But I didn't get there easily. At first, it was really hard for me to be a journalist. I didn't know what I was doing. I thought every article I turned in sucked, because most of them did, and I spent a lot of time hunched over my laptop crying because I didn't think I was good enough. I worried that I should quit, that I really couldn't do it. But just as I was about to say that, just as I was about to quit being a journalist and go study business or something, the next issue of the Temple News came out, and an article that I wrote was on the front page. And when we did our pitch meeting, Julie said, "That article came in really clean. I think you've got it." And that was all the encouragement I needed, that, well, if someone else thinks that I can do it, maybe it's just my anxiety talking. Maybe I'll be okay. And it turns out that I was, because now I'm on staff. That summer, I got an internship opportunity to study with the Fund for American Studies Institute on Political Journalism in Washington, D.C. I had never lived on my own before. Ever. Which might sound kind of strange because I am 18 and in college, but I've never lived on my own before because I still live at home. So it was such an experience to get to see things like the Capitol building and the Washington Monument on a daily basis, and I realized I want to live here someday. Whether or not I do remains to be seen, but it still remains my favorite city. I worked out of the National Press Club, which, if you guys have never been up there, it's basically journalist heaven, and I loved my time there so much, even though I had to wear a suit every day, which is not as glamorous as it sounds. Let me tell you, in DC in the summer, it's hot and you will suffer. So that brings me to now. There's a lot that I left out of my story because this video would be super long, but those who know me well know all the other important parts. So as we speak, I am a junior at Temple. I'm on staff at the Temple News. I have given up trying to grow my hair out, which is why it's so short in this drawing. I have a pretty good life. I've struggled a lot with my health, with anxiety and depression, with family matters, with fitting in. I still don't know how to do the friendship thing, but I'm working on it. But I think I'm doing okay. I've self-published 2 poetry books, and there's a third coming. I've written almost, I think, 150 articles for various publications. Like I said, I'm on staff as a copy editor. I have an internship and one more coming in the fall. I still stay on Instagram, keeping connected with people who seem to think my writing does them some good, and despite the fact that Noah and I now live across the country from each other, we still keep in touch. I go to the Observer twice a week for an internship in New York, and I'll be at the Inquirer next semester. And yep, I'm still at Temple. I'll be there until 2019. But that's my story so far. I don't know if it was interesting, but thanks for listening, and I'll see you guys in my next video.